The director called cut 3 times, but my celebrity husband was still locked in a passionate kiss with his childhood sweetheart. As his assistant, I kindly reminded them, but the childhood sweetheart burst into tears, claiming she was too deep into the role. In front of the entire crew, my husband scolded me, saying that my eyes and heart were so dirty that I saw filth in everything. That night, the paparazzi caught the two of them entering and leaving a 5-star hotel together. In the past, I would have been devastated, obsessing over him and scrambling to handle the PR crisis while crying. But this time, I realized our 5-year secret marriage was utterly meaningless. Right after I spoke with a lawyer about the divorce, Jacob walked into the lounge. The lipstick mark from his childhood sweetheart, Agnes. The moment he saw me, the smile on his face instantly vanished, his gaze turning cold, and said harshly, "Sienna, can't you figure out your place? This is a resting room for the leading actors, arranged by the crew. What are you doing here?" I grabbed the thermos from the makeup table and replied indifferently, "Getting my stuff." Jacob had started his day at 5 in the morning. I'd made the meal in the thermos at 3. The weight hadn't changed, so I knew Jacob hadn't touched a bite. Seeing me turn to leave, he frowned in displeasure and said again, "Don't bother making food anymore. It's unpalatable." It wasn't the first time he'd said my cooking was bad. In the past, I would have exploded, questioning him, "Didn't you say you wanted to eat my cooking for a lifetime? Why is it suddenly disgusting now?" But this time, I didn't even bother to argue. I simply said, and walked out the door. Jacob called after me, "There's a crew dinner tonight. The director wants me to discuss the script with Agnes." I pretended not to hear the guilt in his voice and coldly replied, "Okay." After closing the door, I threw the thermos into the trash. The last scene had been filmed close to home, so Jacob hadn't stayed at the hotel. He returned home around 1 a.m. Seeing that I wasn't waiting for him in the living room like I usually did, Jacob pushed open the bedroom door and said impatiently, "Sienna, you know I have trouble sleeping. Why didn't you brew my calming tea?" I pulled the blanket over my head and lazily replied, "I ran out of tea leaves last night. If you want some, order takeout." With a loud bang, Jacob slammed the door and went into the study. That was his way of showing he was angry, and in the past, it would have been my cue to spend the night tossing and turning, eventually humbling myself to apologize. But that night, he waited until the next morning and I still hadn't knocked on the study door. The next day, the crew moved filming to a remote mountain outside the city. For once, Jacob allowed me to ride in the van with him. Just as I got into the van, Agnes, wearing a low-cut, backless dress, walked up gracefully and said, "Jacob, do you have any bug spray? I always attract mosquitoes." Seeing me, Agnes changed her tone. "Oh, Sienna, you're here too? Then I'd better take the other car." Before Agnes could finish, Jacob coldly said to me, "Sienna, can't you be sensible? Stop causing trouble. Go sit in the assistant's car." For the first time, I said nothing and got out of the car. Watching my figure retreating into the distance, Jacob furrowed his brows. 5 minutes later, I received a WhatsApp message from Jacob. "Today, Agnes will have a scene where she shows her legs. Don't misunderstand." "Understood." I replied shortly. The typing indicator in the chat window stayed on for several minutes. Without thinking, I exited WhatsApp and turned off my phone. Without Jacob's orders, the scenery along the way became more beautiful. It was already 11 at night by the time filming wrapped up. As we were finishing, the scaffold that the carpenters had set up suddenly collapsed. In a flash, Jacob pushed Agnes out of harm's way, and the two of them rolled onto the ground, accidentally locking lips. Chapter 2. The staff on set started cheering and clapping, and Agnes shyly nestled into Jacob's arms. "Oh no, everyone, don't misunderstand. There's really nothing going on between Jacob and me," she said. Jacob didn't respond or explain, but simply tightened his hold on Agnes. I used all my strength to push away the wooden frame, pressing on my calf, and pulled out the splinter stuck in my flesh. Limping away from the scene, I found a quiet spot to tend to my wound. When I returned to the filming site, I discovered everyone had already left. The surrounding darkness stretched endlessly, accompanied by the howling of wild animals. I curled my injured body into a ball, gripping a tree branch and hid on a stone beneath a large tree, keeping vigilant all night long. It wasn't until dawn that I shakily began my descent from the mountain. Halfway down, my phone finally got a signal and Jacob called, furiously scolding me, "Sienna, you're really something, huh? Not answering my calls and slacking off. Agnes got bitten by mosquitoes during filming last night. Go to the hospital and get her some medicine." As the most popular actress of the year, Agnes was known for her unpretentious personality, winning her many fans. Everyone knew she didn't hire personal assistants and took care of things herself. But no one knew that Jacob took care of all her personal affairs, delegating tasks to me. When I remained silent, Jacob quickly lost patience and yelled, "Sienna, are you deaf? I'm giving you half an hour, get back to the set immediately." "I'm on the mountain," I replied. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before he spoke again. He finally asked, "You spent the night on the mountain? Alone?" Surveying my surroundings, I still felt as if a pair of crimson animal eyes were watching me from behind a tree, waiting to pounce. The tension in my mind snapped and tears of delayed fear welled up in my eyes. Jacob's tone softened, "Stay where you are. I'll come get you. It'll take about an hour." The sun blazed above me and hour after hour passed. Still, Jacob never came. Dragging my broken body, I made my way back to the set on my own. When Jacob entered the tent, I had just finished a phone call with a new assistant candidate for an interview. His eyes scanned my phone with cold suspicion, and he asked in a deep voice, "Sienna, who were you talking to?" "Someone I don't know," I replied flatly. Jacob naturally thought this call was a scam call from a stranger. He didn't ask any further questions and I didn't explain. "I figured you'd be hungry, so I brought you some food," he said, tossing a takeout box heavily onto the camping table. The corner of the takeout box, filled with leftover food scraps, peeked out and a sour stench wafted from it. Quickly collecting the box, Jacob cleared his throat and said, "There were a lot of people ordering takeout. They must have grabbed the wrong one." With the kind of people who dined at the same table as a famous actor like Jacob, how could anyone possibly take the wrong box? I lay back on the bed, turning my body to the side. I said coldly, "It's fine. My delivery should be arriving soon anyway." Hearing this, Jacob's expression darkened, and he said in a low voice, "Why didn't you tell me you were ordering takeout?" "Sienna, I've told you many times, there's nothing going on between Agnes and me. Everything is just for the show, for the sake of creating an on-screen chemistry. I don't understand why you're making such a fuss. Why are you so petty?" Facing the man's explanation, I responded coldly, "I'm not making a fuss." Though I was telling the truth, it only fueled Jacob's anger. He threw the takeout box into the trash and said with a sharp tone, "Then why didn't you bring Agnes the medicine? Didn't I tell you it's inconvenient for me to go to the hospital with my public image? It's just a small matter of buying medicine." "Sienna, is this really necessary?" Buying medicine was indeed a small thing, but what about doing laundry and cooking? Agnes claimed she had a germ phobia, insisting all her clothes be hand-washed. So, even when we were filming in the freezing northern winter, with temperatures below -10 degrees, Jacob ordered me to bear the pain of frostbite and hand-wash Agnes's clothes. I remember once when my frostbite was so severe that it bled and stained Agnes's clothes. Upon seeing it, Jacob kicked me out of the hotel, forcing me to wash Agnes's clothes outside in the snow while wearing nothing but a thin nightgown. All because Agnes had casually said, "Jacob, I heard from my relatives that snow can cure frostbite." In Jacob's eyes, I had always been an obedient servant, following his every command without question. But after 5 years of being a servant, I was tired of it. I pulled the blanket over my head and said coldly, "I'm not feeling well, I don't want to go." The space on the other side of the blanket remained quiet for a long time before Jacob stormed out in anger. That night, Jacob and Agnes shot to the top of the trending searches. In the video, Jacob was carrying Agnes in a princess hold, rushing into the hospital, shouting for an emergency. The comments section was filled with praise. "Wow, is this Jacob Levine, the actor, making things official? Oh my gosh, a princess carry. I'm so jealous. If someone tried to lift me at my weight, they'd throw out their back. Isn't anyone concerned about what happened to Agnes? Why did she need to go to the ER? I'm from the crew." Agnes said her forehead felt a bit hot and wanted to find a thermometer. As soon as Jacob heard, he carried her off the lounge chair and drove her to the hospital himself.